What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Gators Online Show. I am Keith Niebuhr. That is senior Gators Online reporter Zach Albaverdi. We've got a lot to discuss on this week's show. The NFL draft was last weekend. We've got some mock drafts for basketball. We're trying to figure out, well, Zach is. I'm letting him do all the heavy lifting. Or not letting, he's doing it. That came out wrong, Zach. But Zach's doing all the heavy lifting on what the basketball roster is going to look like next year. We've got who's coming, who's going. Basketball portal intel. And so we're going to cover that too. And we'll talk a little Gators baseball at the end of the show. But before we get going, as we always say, we got to pay some bills. So Zach, take it away.
Absolutely. Want to start, as we do each and every week, with a shout out to Big Game Football Factory, our lead sponsor here at the Gators Online Show. And definitely want to encourage all Florida fans that would like to get their hands on that ball that you see right now on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, and is the official game ball of the Florida Gators in 2025. And you can head to biggameusa.com and use the code GatorsOnline to get 10% off your entire order and free shipping for a limited time. The Gators designed this ball with Big Game USA to ensure they're comfortable with it, and it's truly one of a kind. You can start your collection of Florida's official game balls today, perfect for tailgates, autographs from your favorite Gators, or gifts. And the code works on any football, and it's perfect for true Florida fans to display it or give it away. And you can be among the first to own it. Snap yours today at biggameusa.com/Gators. And I would show off the ball that I have, Keith, but my son took it, and I don't know what he was outside playing with it, and it's been confiscated.
Yeah, you're never going to see that again, Zach.
I don't think so.
Look, we've got to talk NFL draft. Florida had 7 guys drafted, which isn't a bad number. Obviously there were no first, second, or third round picks, but it still was a pretty good few days for the Florida Gators. Well, really one day in particular when they all went off the board. But 7 Gators, starting with Zach, Shamir DK, the wide receiver, went to the Tennessee Titans in the 4th round, number 103 pick overall. He had 42 catches last year, first on the team, 783 yards receiving, second on the team. Both of those numbers were career highs. And then, Zach, he ran a 4.34 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. Shamir DK, I'm not surprised at all that he went that high in the draft. And also he has added value with the return game. He's a unique prospect, one of the better interviews on the team. So I thought he was one of the more cerebral players on that football team. I really liked him. What did you make of him going in the 4th round? And then we'll kind of get your general thoughts on Florida in the draft.
Well, first of all, shout out to you, Keith. You got it right. You called it.
Oh, did I? I thought I said Badger. That tells you.
You said DK or Badger, but you lean more towards DK.
Well, yeah, I just like the guy. I just think he's a good player, be a good representative of his team. But did you think was that about where you expected him to go, Zach?
It was, but I definitely will say that I think being the first pick off the board on day 3 was a nice way for Florida to kick off what was a very eventful day 3 in the 2025 NFL draft. And it does go to show what his senior season meant in terms of his draft stock and what he was able to show in the SEC. I mean, there's no way that this guy is going at the top of the 4th round coming off of the year that he had at Wisconsin in his last season with the Badgers. He completely changed the narrative, and I think the perception and outlook that NFL teams had on him. And obviously, as Napier noted this at Pro Day, he got faster throughout the year. He increased his max velocity 5 different times throughout the course of 2024. So that obviously showed up in Indy with his 40-yard dash. But kind of appropriate, I think, given his impact not only in the receiver room, but just what he brought as one of those transfers from the portal. Kind of fitting that he was the first Gator to get drafted. I know a lot of guys on the team kind of looked up to him and respected him, which says a lot about who he is and the type of player and character that he has, because he was only in Gainesville for 1 year. And I do also think, Keith, you mentioned that Florida didn't have any guys go in the first opening rounds. Again, like last year, I would argue, and I think most people would agree that that's likely and probably more reflective of the previous staff and kind of their development to this point of guys that would have or should have been drafted around this time. It's interesting now that the last 2 draft classes for the Gators, the first guy that comes off the board is a wide receiver that Billy Napier and his staff added from the transfer portal. So it does kind of speak to the lack of developed talent that had progressed to this point in the last 2 draft classes. But after just having one guy go last year, Florida had a ton of guys get drafted here on day 3. And you're right. I think DK was the perfect guy to hear his name called first.
Yeah, so let's. I got some numbers here. So Florida was 7 guys drafted, Zach, and historically, what does that mean to the University of Florida football program? Well, the record for Florida is 10 in 1 year, and I believe we talked about this the last show. I think that was 1978. There were a lot more rounds back then. Wes Chandler was the first Gator off the board, the great wide receiver who ended up, I think, being 1 year in his career was the AFC Player of the Year, AFC Offensive Player of the Year, something like that. But a Gator legend. But 10 guys, so 7's only 3 off of that. So doing a good job developing players, recognizing talent, obviously through the portal and such, and then developing that as well. Other guys drafted, Zach, I got the list right here. Cam Jackson went in the 5th round of the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to have you talk about that one.
Another transfer that they added from the portal.
That's right. But we'll get into him in a second. We'll go back to them. But I've got some info on that one, too, just because I know somebody that's going to be playing right next to him on that defensive line. Jason Marshall, the cornerback. Actually, I need to point out Cam Jackson, nose tackle, Carolina Panthers, 5th round. Jason Marshall, cornerback, Miami Dolphins, hometown kid, 5th round. Let's see. Next up, Shamar James, the linebacker, 5th round pick of the Dallas Cowboys. Graham Mertz. This was an interesting one, Zach. I'm going to have you talk about this one in a minute. But Graham Mertz went in the 6th round of the Houston Texans, the Gators quarterback. I love that one. Jeremy Crawshaw, the punter from Florida, Denver Broncos. He was their 6th round pick.
Aussie, baby.
He's got a good chance to be a starter based on everything I'm reading. I can break that down in a little bit. And then Triquez Bridges was the last Gator picked in the 7th round.
No combine invite, too.
That's right. He shocked I don't know if shock's the right word, but he proved some people wrong. 7th round of the LA Chargers, can play corner, can play safety. I think they like him at corner. But Zach, back to Cam Jackson, 2nd Gator overall. He could have left school after this previous season, the 2023 season,
Correct.
But chose to come back. And, it was huge for the Gator defense to get him back. And he went out and he had a hell of a year. And, that's not a bad landing spot for a nose tackle. I mean, he's not a guy that's going to get 13 sacks. He's got a specific role, but that's a valuable role. What did you make of that pick?
Yeah, and, he's also a guy that also improved his draft stock. And I think, especially during the draft process, he lost a lot of weight, got in shape. It was something that Napier commented about at Pro Day, saying, now that the money's on the line, man, he's really getting his body right. But he's obviously one of those guys that was key to Florida's success in the front 7 last season. It was going to be a tough guy to replace, obviously, in 2025. But, he's like Caleb Banks are 2 players that they brought in from the portal that they felt like was going to be key for their defensive line, not only to be productive and competitive in the SEC, but just to kind of take that next step. So he was key in that. I think obviously Caleb Banks, who we'll talk about here shortly, kind of just made the decision that Cam Jackson made, where he could have came out last year and decided to come back. Caleb Banks is going to do the same thing and try to improve his draft stock. So nice landing spot for Cam Jackson. He started kind of a run of picks for Florida in the 5th round. Jason Marshall he was at 140. Jason Marshall goes at 150, and then Shamar James at 152 to the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously a great situation for Jason Marshall. Probably, if he doesn't get injured, is getting drafted much higher than the 5th round and the 150th pick. But nonetheless, for him to end up with his hometown Miami Dolphins as his landing spot had to be meaningful for him and his family. And then Shamar James, I don't know how much he could have improved his draft stock, Keith, by coming back for his senior season. But he goes in the 5th round to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sure he's going to like that landing spot. And Graham Mertz, man, he was not on a lot of mock draft projections. I think the ones that he was on had him going in the 7th round. So for him to go off the board as early as he did, before Quinn Ewers and some of the other quarterbacks that were being tracked that day, says a lot about what he was able to accomplish in his 2 years at Florida. He kind of changed the narrative about him being turnover prone and being inaccurate with the Gators. I mean, obviously had the 3rd highest completion percentage in 2023, and then also his 3 interceptions were the fewest in the SEC that season. They were all off of tip passes. So those were the big knocks on him coming over from Wisconsin. And I think obviously he did enough to get picked up, and he's also coming off of the injury too. So pretty impressive. And I'm not surprised by Crawshaw getting drafted. Yeah. Maybe a little bit sooner than I thought, because sometimes the punters, they are weighted until the 7th round. So shout out to him. I believe he was the only punter taken in the draft. So quite the feather in his cap. And then Bridges, like we mentioned, being able to get that pick without having a combine invite. He killed his pro day workout. I think 4.38 was his time. So surprised that Elijah Badger did not get drafted, but he ends up with the Kansas City Chiefs, which is a great team for him to end up with. One of 5 free agent signings for the Gators of guys that did not get drafted. Montrell Johnson was probably the other notable name. He ends up with the Super Bowl champs, Philadelphia Eagles, so good spot for him too. Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon, Keith, he had about, I want to say like 3 or 4 4th or 5th round projections, so I'm not sure how he ended up completely out of the draft, but nonetheless, he gets a spot with the Tennessee Titans and a couple other guys as well receive some minicamp invites in RJ Moten and Joey Slackman. So all in all, Gators get 7 players drafted, 5 free agent signings, and at least to this point, 2 guys with minicamp invites. So a much more productive draft cycle in terms of guys finding NFL homes than the last one. Not as many guys in those first 3 rounds, and Florida's streak of first-round picks obviously comes to an end. However, it looks like they could have multiple picks potentially next year, Keith, in the first round.
Yeah, I just want to go over a couple of the guys. We'll get into next year in just a second. But, Cam Jackson, we talked about earlier, started 22 games at Florida at nose, 69 tackles, but 37 last year. This is a guy that the Carolina Panthers, if you watch them at all the last few years, their defensive line has basically been a one-man show, and that one man being former SEC player Derek Brown. The rest of the defensive line has been sort of substandard. So they have decided to really rebuild that defensive line during the offseason. They love Cam Jackson's size, but they also think, Zach, he's more athletic than people realize. It's funny, he's listed at 6'6", 325, and you saw that photo. Here he is right here, Zach. Cam Jackson and Billy Napier. There's no way he is 325 pounds, okay? Cam Jackson is huge. So, the Carolina Panthers, they're excited to have him because of all the things that he can do, but also as a true nose tackle, that'll free up Derek Brown, who's a 3 technique, 4-eye kind of guy, to really get in the backfield and be disruptive. And so that's the role that Cam Jackson's going to have. They love him. Jason Marshall, as we said, hometown kid. Look, Miami, last time I checked, Jalen Ramsey, I hope he hasn't been traded since before we recorded, or since we're recording this, but he, it looks like he's not going to be with Miami. If they've already traded him, forgive me. We've been so busy. But also Miami earlier this year cut Kendall Fuller, who started 11 games at cornerback last year. So the need is there for the Miami Dolphins. Jason Marshall has a real opportunity. Dallas Cowboys, DeMarvion Overshawn, the possible starter at weak side linebacker, has an injury and could miss significant time, maybe even the whole season. So there's an opportunity for Shamar James, who obviously was a huge recruit just a few years ago coming out of Alabama. Now, Graham Mertz, Zach, this is one I love. How about this? Houston saw something in Mertz. Remember, they traded 2 picks number 216 and number 241 to move up to 197. So when all that's happening, I'm sure people in Houston are thinking, Quinn Ewers, come on down, baby. Instead, they go with Graham Mertz. Hey, I've got a friend that covers the Texas Longhorns. He's like, what just happened? So they're stunned because out in Texas, Quinn Ewers was billed, Zach, this as a generational quarterback. And he goes behind a guy that missed, more than half his last season because he was injured. So here's the situation in Houston. C.J. Stroud's their starting quarterback. That's not going to change. But Davis Mills, kid from Atlanta, he's the number 2. He's only under contract for 1 more year. The Texans also signed Keaton Slovis, well-traveled college quarterback, in January. That's probably who Graham Mertz is going to compete with for the third-string job. Well, again, if he wins that third-string job, great. And your number 2 guy, Davis Mills, won't be around next year. Good chance. Now they can go out and sign other people, but it's up to Graham Mertz now to impress them. And if he does impress them, he may very well be in 2026, let's say, be the number 2 quarterback behind C.J. Stroud, and guys get hurt. So love that spot. I think it really works out.
Great situation.
Yes. Not every situation's, not everyone's great. Triquez Bridges, the Chargers, quite frankly, have a crowded defensive backfield. They saw enough in him. At the very least, I think he could be a practice squad player for a year, show some development, and if it doesn't work out there, it'll end up somewhere else. But I think these are some pretty solid opportunities for these young guys, Zach. That's the most important thing. Turning the page to 2026, Zach, the guy that's getting a lot of the buzz right now is the end, Caleb Banks. And, is he – how do I put this? He's getting a lot of first-round projections. Why do you think that is? What's he do so well? What is making people put him up so high?
Well, certainly the way that he finished the 2024 season, just had incredible games against LSU and Ole Miss. But I will say, though, that there was a lot of positive buzz out there about Caleb Banks even before last season. I know that within the program and some of the sources that I spoke with said that NFL teams were viewing him as a high round type of defensive lineman. And that was before he had a breakout kind of stretch there at the end of last season. So I think that he's always had kind of eyes on him, and now that he's put it together, there's a lot to like about his game and what he could be with a full year of playing at that level and being that productive. And I think that's certainly the goal for him, as opposed to, coming out this past year and probably being a day 2 pick at best. He's got a chance to turn himself into a first-round pick for the 2026 draft. And right now, that's where publications have him pegged. ESPN came out with its, way too early mock draft for 2026. And they had Caleb Banks going in the first round, number 17 overall to the Arizona Cardinals. CBS also put out their way too early mock draft, and they've got Banks going way higher, number 4 overall to the New York Jets. So, again, I had been told prior to last season that there were teams that viewed Caleb Banks as a first-round type talent. If he's even in the conversation of top 10, top 5, this time next year, well, then that means he would have had an incredible 2025 campaign, which I think he's capable of. Now that, he's kind of tapped into his potential, I think he's got, a position coach in Gerald Chapman that has really kind of found the key to his success, knows how to push Caleb, push the right buttons, that is. So I'm looking forward to him having a huge year, and I'm not surprised by these first-round projections for him. I will say, I am surprised at some of the other ones. Jake Slaughter, maybe not so much, because he's a guy, obviously, he's a first-team All-American. He's got some first-round projections. I think it was Pro Football Focus that has him going 20th overall to the Houston Texans in their early mock draft. But how about Tyreek Sapp, Keith, Florida starting edge, returning for his redshirt senior season, the Gators leader in sacks and tackles for loss last year. I guess because of that, not surprising that publications and NFL teams might be high on him for 2026, but he's also gotten a first-round projection from Pro Football Focus in their early mock draft, 29th overall to the Kansas City Chiefs. So towards the end of the first round, but nonetheless shows you what publications and potentially NFL teams think about his talent. To have Tyreek Sapp and Caleb Banks both back for 2025, they each one of them could have turned pro. They would not have been first-round picks, which is where they're projected to go next year, at least early on. And that's part of the reason why they came back. And then obviously Jake Slaughter leading the way in the offensive line.
Yeah, I was interested when the mock draft had Caleb Banks in the top 5. I mean, that's so high. I mean, so I went back and looked, and so the defensive linemen in Florida history that have been in the top 6 of the first round of the draft. Gerard Warren, big money. You remember him, Zach.
Or Big Penny, as Spurs called him once.
Big Penny. 2001, he went, I want to say, number 3 overall. Dante Fowler, defensive end, went number 3 overall in 2015. And then Kevin Carter back in, 30 years ago, our old buddy Kevin, he went number 6 overall to the Rams. So, I mean, that's pretty good company. You know what I mean?
Oh,
so, again, I feel like you do, though. That's a mock. That's just a projection. He's not going to go back that up.
That's a projection of expecting him to play every single game like he did against LSU and Ole Miss.
That's right. But look, that means the potential's there. And so, for his sake, for Florida's sake, let's hope he goes out and does it. If he plays like these projections think he might, and Tyreek Sapp plays like these projections think he might, well, that's 4 guys right up there in the line of scrimmage area doing some damage and hunting and getting after it, and that you're probably going to be pretty good. So you're going to need those guys to play at a high level. Hey, Zach, a guy I'm keeping an eye on for next year's draft, J. Michael Sturdivant, the receiver transfer from UCLA. Big kid, 6'2.5", 6'3", had that big freshman year at Cal, then transferred to UCLA. His numbers sort of went down each year. He got hurt a little bit, and Billy Napier mentioned that the numbers went down. They're going to try to recapture the guy that he was. But he, in his defense, he did sustain some injuries, I think, at least last year, maybe even the season before. But how much could a guy like that, in your mind, we're not mock draft experts, but he's coming in. He's tall. He's very fast, as everybody says. He's had a heck of a spring, they said. And he could be that consistent downfield threat, that deep threat for DJ Lagway, who, by the way, may be the best deep ball thrower in college football. So, if you look at a guy like J. Michael Sturdivant, what could a guy like that do for his stock this year? And just in your opinion, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously comes in to kind of play that X spot and take over that where Badger was. Another guy who played that position for the Gators under Napier was Justin Shorter, who ended up going in the 5th round. And certainly, I don't think maybe had the athleticism or certainly the speed that we are hearing that J. Michael Sturdivant has. And I definitely feel like he's got the potential to be kind of a big play, big body, deep threat receiver, somewhat in the way that Justin Shorter was in Florida's offense, maybe a little bit more similar to him than like an Elijah Badger. But nonetheless, I mean, he is going to be one of the focal points of Florida's offense and specifically its passing attack. Yeah. We just have heard rave reviews about him really since he started in spring ball. So obviously the videos that kind of came out from camp, and then the great catch that he made in the spring game where he showed his ability to locate the ball and bring it down. That is exactly what Florida was looking for in the portal and what they needed to go replace in Badger. So, you're looking at a guy that he's filling the shoes for who did not get drafted this past class, despite, I don't know what more Badger could have done to get drafted and still didn't get his name called again. Ended up with a great landing spot. I think J. Michael Sturdivant certainly got a chance to go much, much higher in the draft and probably even higher than Justin Shorter if he can have the type of production that Florida is going to be counting on.
Okay. Speaking of Elijah Badger, I was wondering that myself. Why didn't this guy get drafted? So I made some phone calls, and there was some people or close to the UF program said, well, they just thought that maybe some of the attitude chatter, we don't know if it was legit or not, from Arizona State, from his time in Arizona State, may have followed him into the draft. And I said, okay, if that's the case, did Florida have any issues with him? These people are connected, they have sources that know the Florida program well. And they said, to our knowledge, no, that he was a model. He was the coaches apparently love the guy. So who knows what's going to happen, but Elijah Badger's got some talent, man. I think that guy's going to be playing in the NFL.
Agreed.
And it's funny. He kind of reminds me a little bit. People are going to say I'm crazy, of a former Chiefs receiver, Kadarius Toney, in the sense of what Toney was so good after the catch at Florida. Yeah. Obviously, Elijah Badger wasn't as good after the catch as Kadarius Toney, but he was pretty good. He could do a lot of things, same body type. I'm just a big Elijah Badger fan, quite frankly. I want to see him do well. Hey, Zach, we got to go. We got to shift gears to basketball. But before we do, you've got an ad read from Rhoback.
I do. Your buddies over there.
Yes.
At Rhoback. And there's only one way to describe Rhoback: best fit and best feel. Those who aren't familiar with Rhoback, they're completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. They've released so many items with their newly licensed game day collection, and it's fantastic. Novel polo designs and clean hoodie and Q-zip designs from some of your favorite schools, including the Florida Gators. Nobody else on the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Rhoback has proudly been leading the NIL charge as well, having signed partnerships with multiple college athletes, past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. Use the code Gators20 on Rhoback.com for a generous 20% off all new customers. That's spelled RHOBAC.CK.com. And that's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with the code Gators20.
All right, Zach, we're going to talk some hoops, man. These, it still feels surreal. It was, I guess, 3 weeks ago when Florida won.
I know, man.
Pushing 4 weeks, like national champs. It's just like, man, it just still doesn't seem. I tell everybody, I used to be excited when they made it to the NIT, and now they're the 3-time national champs. But we got to talk a lot of hoops here. So, what do you want to do first, Zach? We want to talk about some of the guys they've already added through the portal, or do you want to talk about the guy that's visiting as we record this? What's first on your mind here?
Or
mock drafts. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's stick with the draft talk,
okay.
and then we'll get to the juicy stuff at the end.
Well, you had a story today. You had some mock projections of some Gator basketball players, and let me pull this up real quick here. And you got the latest projections saying they include 3 Florida Gators. Look, when you're winning big, like these guys just did, to the victor goes the spoils, right? And so you've got some great reporting about Walter Clayton, about Elijah Martin, and about Alex Condon. What's the latest, Zach?
Yeah, I think the latest is one of those guys that you mentioned, Elijah Martin. I don't think anybody's going to be necessarily surprised about any of the latest developments with the mock draft projections, the new ones that came out this week, now that all the early entries into the NBA draft have been finalized. We've turned the calendar into the month of into the month of May. So now a lot of these publications have put out their latest mock drafts. And obviously Walter Clayton was already getting first round projections. He's still getting first round projections. We'll talk about those. Alex Condon had been getting some second round projections. I think there's one publication that has him as a first round pick. Those second round projections continued for Condon. I think the biggest development, and to my knowledge, I did not see any mock drafts prior to this week that had Elijah Martin included, but he's now included on 2. The Athletic and Yahoo Sports. Shout out to Yahoo Sports.
That's right.
They both have Elijah Martin projected now in the second round of the 2025 NBA draft. The Athletic has him going 53rd overall to the Phoenix Suns, and they think the Suns trade up to get Martin. And then Yahoo Sports has Martin going 56 overall to the Memphis Grizzlies. So that's awesome for Elijah that he is getting that recognition. He, as well as a lot of the other guys, are out there training in LA right now for the NFL draft. Elijah Martin and Walter Clayton just did a podcast this past week with Mike Miller and Udonis Haslam. That was a great watch. But I definitely think that, I mean, this guy's got to be getting a lot of publicity. I think it's only going to increase. He was already a well-known name going into March Madness because of what he did at FAU, and then certainly some of the plays and the performances that he had on the way to Florida's national title run. I don't know how he's not going to get a bunch of looks from NBA teams and find a way to get himself drafted. And I am glad to see that he's now getting some mock draft picks because he should be.
What's he like, 6'2", but he plays at times. He's a unique guy because he can play 5'11", but he can play 6'8".
Yeah.
What I love about Elijah Martin, and really what made me think about this was when I interviewed basketball signee CJ Ingram a week ago. He said, hey, I'm going to bring the toughness that Elijah Martin had. And I thought, he's right. Elijah Martin is one tough dude, man. That guy is a tough dude. And, if you're an NBA GM, I don't know that toughness gets you into the first round if you're not scoring 25 points a game, but it's certainly something that's going to put you on the radar of a lot of teams. So I love that he's now showing up in these mock drafts. I think that's a guy that could be a great addition to an NBA roster, just in terms of the attitude and the physicality and playing hard on both ends and all that. So, all right, Zach, Walter Clayton and Alex Condon are the two other guys. You just touched on them. What's your feeling on, obviously Walter Clayton's gone. Everybody knows that, but Alex Condon's still got this decision to make. Some mock drafts, I think you mentioned this. Sometimes I forget things. Some had him in the first round not too long ago, but now he's showing up in more second round.
He is correct.
That's got to be good for Florida.
100%.
Not a genius here, but I mean,
100%. And look, Todd Golden did an interview this week, which we'll talk about some of his comments that he made here in a moment. But he's not hiding from the fact that he wants Alex Condon back next season, and he's literally doing an interview while Alex is sitting right next to him, and he's making these comments live on air. Hopefully if we can get Alex Condon back next season. I mean, look, I think obviously if he's a guaranteed first round pick and probably in the top 15, top 20 range, he would turn pro. At least right now, it doesn't look like that's where he's pegged. Could that change throughout the draft process? And if and when he gets invited to the NBA Combine and gets to go through that, potentially. But for him to be, it seems mostly being looked at as a second round talent, that is good for Florida's chances of getting him back, because he's still going to be able to go through this draft process, get feedback from teams, figure out what he needs to do to put himself in that first round range.
All right, if he comes back, and you were going to reference this Todd Golden interview this past week, if Alex Condon comes back, what does that mean for the great Tommy Howell? He's a hell of a player, by the way, and what a jump from year one to year two. What does it mean for him and the Florida roster, Zach? Because it's pretty interesting. This was a pretty cool development, I thought, that you reported on this week based on Todd's comments.
Yeah, I think people were already kind of expecting this, and we'll get a little bit more into what Florida's roster and starting lineup could look like next season here in a minute. But Todd did kind of give a nugget this week when he said that they are planning to play Tommy at the 3 spot. There's been a lot of talk about Stojakovic. He was maybe a wing that Florida was looking at. Obviously, the Gators signed A.J. Brown. He can play the wing spot. But I think Florida's intention is to play Tommy more at the 3 instead of the 4. Now, that is contingent on Alex Condon coming back. If Alex Condon comes back, that is going to be their plan, to play Tommy at the 3, Condon at the 4, and then one of their bigs, one of their centers rather, as the starting 5. Now, Ruben Chinyelu is obviously Florida's starting center from this past season. Micah Hanlogden was Florida's starting center in 2023, 2024. Chinyelu is going through the draft process, but I think all indications and expectations are that he will return for his junior year. Like Condon, just wants to get feedback from teams and see where he's at, what he needs to work on. And he's not being included in any of these mock drafts. So We'll talk here in a second about what Florida's starting five could look like, but we know right now that at the 3 spot is going to be Tommy Houck, which obviously is something that probably fits well for him, and he showed the ability to hit some threes this past season.
All right. This week, and we're recording, I need to point this out, we're recording on Thursday, right? Florida's got a visitor, Desmond Claude, in a star guard for the Southern Cal Trojans, high-scoring guy. And a lot of people seem to think that Florida's got an excellent chance to land him. So, again, Florida's already added a couple portal pickups. Xavier Lee, the point guard from Princeton, outstanding player with great vision. I mean, he's going to be a high assist guy from what I can tell. And then the Brown kid you mentioned, A.J. Brown from Ohio. So Desmond Claude, if you could get him, boy, look, they're losing their 4 top guards from last year. But man, these would be 3. That's a pretty good look. If you're going, it's not ideal to lose all those guys, but I mean, this would be a heck of a transfer portal haul if they can land Desmond Claude, Zach.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Florida now clearly is looking for a guy to step in and play that 2 spot. There's some other names that they're in the mix for. Ben Henschel, Boogie Flan, 2 guys that are going through the NBA draft process. And if they turn pro, obviously they're not going to be options for Florida. Claude is also going through the NBA draft process, but seems more likely to come back to school. And Florida has done a lot of work on the front end of this to position themselves to land his pledge should he withdraw from the 2025 NBA draft. I got to say that if you're a Florida fan, you got to feel good about the fact that this guy is coming to campus. Florida's got this visit scheduled, and he's going to be in Gainesville because Florida's got a pretty good batting average right now with transfers that they bring on campus for official visits.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to say in the last 3 recruiting cycles, including this one, Keith, Florida has landed pretty much every single transfer that they've hosted. I want to say maybe 3 years ago, I think there was one guy that they brought in for a visit that they ended up not signing.
Yeah.
Every other guy they have signed, and I think that is intentional. I don't think that if they get to the point in the recruitment that by the time that this guy is coming to campus, they're bringing him on campus, they feel like they're going to land him. I don't think that they're putting in that much work if they don't feel like they've gotten to that point. So I like where Florida stands with Claude. He probably could pop this week, or he could at least make up his mind that Florida is where he wants his next destination to be, if that is in college. And maybe that we might have to wait for that to go public until he formally decides to withdraw from the NBA draft. So this one could take a little bit more time than Xavier Lee and A.J. Brown, but who knows? He could come to Gainesville and have such a great time, Keith, that he just announces and then does what Xavier Lee did and withdraw from the draft without even going through these workouts and stuff. So we'll see.
Well, we got to hope that he doesn't announce before this show runs. So there's no information.
I don't think so.
But look, okay, so if you're Todd Golden, if you're a Florida Gators fan and you're watching all this, look, there's still a lot of moving parts here. Chinleyu, like you said, Alex Condon, Claude. But, man, we know a lot of the pieces. And you start thinking, well, if Chinleyu and Condon come back, yeah, I'm getting my names mixed up here, and then you add Claude, and I mean, that's it looks like a pretty good roster to me.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, you know what I mean? Now, maybe a little more front court centric next year. Not
100%.
Yeah, but that's okay. And you would have all these returning front court players to guide you through the first part of the season when your backcourt may need that time to develop chemistry. The front court guys are already going to have that with each other. So what's your take on what this roster could be? And then we'll shift gears to a third sport. What do you think, Zach, in a nutshell?
Yeah. I mean, look, you just obviously we're projecting here, but if you're pegging Claude as the third addition in Florida's transfer class, you're looking at a starting 5 of Xavier Lee, Desmond Claude, Tommy Houck, Alex Condon if he comes back, and then Ruben Chinyelu if he comes back. That is a damn good starting 5. And like you said, they're going to be a lot bigger with that lineup. Now, in the event that Alex Condon turns pro, it would be interesting to see what then the lineup would look like. Would they still stick with Tommy at the 3 spot? Or now do you play him at the 4? But just looking at the potential for their starting 5, because I, like a lot of other forecasters, I think expect Alex Condon to come back next season. So and we definitely expect Chinyelu to come back. So you're looking at that as the starting 5, and Xavier Lee kind of being the guy to lead that charge in Florida's backcourt. In addition to the comments that Golden made about Tommy Houck, he also made some comments about Xavier Lee and kind of what really impressed him. He spoke about how he performed at a high level against Princeton's best competition that they played. But the stats that he really kind of touted were his assist to turnover ratio, and had a 35% assist rate at Princeton last year against a 14% turnover rate. And he says, for a stat nerd like him to see numbers like that, it says a lot about his ball handling and his playmaking ability, which Todd Golden said both of them are elite. So you're going to have Lee at that point guard position that's kind of making plays, also being a scorer and a facilitator. If you've got Claude there as well at the 2 spot, he can handle the ball as well. And obviously he's going to be more of a scorer. And man, you've got Tommy Houck at the 3. We know what he can do from the perimeter, and obviously he's a force inside. And then you got A.J. Brown and Isaiah Brown, who are probably both going to be coming off the bench but playing significant minutes in that rotation. Both can play probably the 2 or the 3. So you're going to have some depth there. Maybe there'll be some times where you got the Brown brothers on the floor together, Keith.
Yeah.
But, there's the depth is there. You still need to get, obviously, that one more guard at least. Now, here's what's interesting, Keith. I think that if and when they get Claude, they could be done.
Okay.
I think that could be the last addition that they have to this roster, at least from a scholarship standpoint. However, what happens if Ben Henschel withdraws from the draft? What happens if he wants to come to Florida? Florida would still have the scholarship room to take him. And if Alex Condon comes back to Florida, I think that Ben Henschel would potentially want to play with him. But what would that look like for Florida's lineup and their minutes and their starters? Because I don't know how you add Ben Henschel and then not start him. Yeah. So I'm going to say that could complicate things. I mean, it'd be a good problem to have.
Yeah, I was going to say, Zach, this seems like a pretty good problem to have if you're Todd Golden.
Yeah. So I don't know if they get Desmond Claude, does that impact Ben Henschel? Does that now maybe make him less likely to come to Florida because he knows maybe he's not guaranteed to start, or he's going to have to, the rotation, the minutes might not be as available. Maybe Henschel turns pro no matter what, and we're just wasting our breath. I do know, and I can't say here on the Gators Online show that Todd and his staff have obviously been in contact with him and are going, communicating with him as he goes through this process. But I also think that there is a chance that a likelihood rather, not a chance, a likelihood that they could land Claude and then be done.
Okay. All right. That's it for basketball. We got one more sport to talk about, and Zach's got to go here. So, Zach, why is this? Oh, we got to. Well, hold on.
Hold on.
Back it up. We got to read an ad first. Go for it, my man.
Absolutely, and this will lead us right into our next topic. But we've got some exciting news from our friend Andy at MyPerfectFranchise.net. He's a big baseball fan, and from his line of work, he's seen firsthand the fantastic traits that baseball players bring to the franchise world. He's offering up a donation of $500 to $1,000 to Florida's Baseball NIL Collective if anyone from our site purchase a franchise at MyPerfectFranchise.net. He thinks it's a cool opportunity to help the Florida baseball program Now is the perfect time to contact Andy to learn more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help. If you have any questions about business ownership, head to myperfectfranchise.net to learn more, and you can call and text Andy anytime at 404-973-9901.
I jumped the gun earlier, but Zach, why is this guy smiling? Why is Kevin O'Sullivan smiling? Well, wasn't that long ago that Florida, I think, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these numbers. I think Florida was 1-11 in SEC play.
Correct.
And, that's not what we're used to seeing around here. This is a guy that's been to so many College World Series. He's got a national championship, all that stuff. Florida now, though, entering this weekend series at South Carolina is 30-16 overall and 8-13 in the SEC, tied for 12. Still some ways to go. Still trying to climb up. They've got 9 SEC games remaining, couple road trips, and then somebody at home. So it's not going to get any easier. The SEC is brutal this year, Zach. But how has Florida been able to turn this around? Why, in a nutshell? I don't follow the team as closely as you do. I know some pitching. The pitching is gotten a lot better, obviously. But what, in your estimation, are the 2 or 3 reasons that Florida's been able to turn this thing around? Because it's been a hell of a turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors in play. I do think that they've probably one of the biggest things that they've just kind of got over the hump of figuring out how to win as a team and deal with adversity and what it takes to win a series in the SEC. How they needed to move forward with some of the injuries that they've been dealing with, and they have just finally put it together here in the last dozen games. They've won 10 of their last 12 games. I really think that the move to with Bobby Bosner to the start of Florida's lineup has been kind of key to get the bat swinging and to get their offense going. Brody Donay has obviously been on a tear here during this stretch, and then Luke Heyman. Just some big time home runs that he's hit that have kind of just been momentum swingers in some of these games. And Florida is just having more consistency at the plate. Now, flip to the other side. They've had some errors here and there defensively, but they've been playing pretty solid baseball on that side. And then just their pitching. I mean, Peterson obviously coming off of a career high this past week. 13 Ks in that Friday night win that he had over Arkansas. Just an incredible performance, set the tone for the weekend. I think, they've obviously had injuries on the mound, and you would have to say that Aiden King stepping into that starting role on Saturday has also brought some stability to that pitching staff. He's clearly got a great future ahead of him. It was always a guy that I think we thought that there was a chance that he could end up getting an opportunity to start the season, maybe not under these circumstances, but he's made the most of it. And certainly I think between him and Peterson and then Florida's bullpen, obviously, that's really been the bright spots from the pitching. Now, Sunday has not been the greatest. They're still trying to get settled on a Sunday starter. That is kind of when their pitching staff and their depth or lack thereof starts to show up, and I think that is the next step for them as they wrap up the regular season and try to get ready for postseason play, which it looks like right now they position themselves to make the tournament. They need to get a solidified Sunday starter. That's their next step as a team.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you as we finish up the show. Just your thoughts. I mean, yes or no, do they make the tournament? And it's hard to tell because this week it's South Carolina. I want to say next week it's at Texas, Zach. Does that sound right? And then,
that's right.
And then at home against Alabama. That's another great team. So South Carolina is the weakest of those 3 opponents. However, that's on the road. So it's not easy. These final 9 SEC games are not going to be easy. Is Florida locked to get in the in-state tournament? Do they need to go 500? What? I mean, look, I know you're not on the selection committee, but what does your gut tell you how they have to finish in these final 10 games and then the SEC tournament?
I think they need to get 12 to get to 12 conference wins.
Okay.
I think that's probably the number that will do it. So they're 8-13 right now in conference play, and as you mentioned, Keith, they've got 9 games remaining. So they need to get 4 more wins at least. So I even think that they could have a losing record here over their next 3 series. and still potentially get into the tournament. I do think it's important for them to get to win. Obviously, with those 4 wins, for those to be included in 2 series wins, meaning I think they need to win at South Carolina. Obviously, if they could sweep the Gamecocks, which they're capable of, that would be a huge step in the right direction. But if they can just get 2, and then win 2 games against Alabama at home and win that series, I think they're in. I think that they could even get swept at Texas and still make it into the tournament, just talking to some people around that program. So I think 12 is the number that they need to get to. I think if they get to lucky number 13, they're in for sure.
Okay, and obviously you just want to get in. I mean, remember there was some debate last year whether Florida was going to get in or deserving of getting in, and didn't they need to win a couple games at the SEC tournament just to have a 500 record? And then lo and behold, they're playing in Omaha to wrap up the season. But that will do it for this edition of the Gators Online Show. Zach, with all the great intel as usual, we appreciate everybody stopping by. Be sure to like and subscribe down below and leave a comment. Whatever you feel like saying, it's okay. We love talking about Florida sports. Zach and I are both University of Florida grads. We both grew up in the area. This is just our dream, and it's been a pleasure doing this show, and we love having everybody stop by. Also, make sure you go to gatorsonline.com for more of the stories that we've been referencing. There's a lot more information in those articles, so check out gatorsonline.com, and also a lot of recruiting coverage, which you're only going to find at gatorsonline.com. So for senior Gators Online reporter Zach Albaverde, I am Keith Niebuhr. Take care, and we'll do it again next week.